There was nothing worse than a love you'd lost. A love that had betrayed you or proven false, you could burn away with righteous anger until nothing remained but relief. But to find a love that had been pure, earned through years of patience and so profound it felt like breathing, and then having that love taken from you. Queen Callie lived with memories of her lost love, like treasures locked in a chest she couldn't help but open. The feel of her husband's calloused palm against her cheek, the corner of his mouth quirking up when he was trying not to smile, the sound of his laugh, rare and precious as gold. 8 years ago today, Jareth had been taken, and only one piece of her king remained solid and real and present in her life. Their son. "Tell me again," Henry said quietly, "about the day father left." He had Jareth's dark hair, the same stubborn set to his jaw. He was 8 years old today. "Your father loved you," Callie began, the words worn smooth from repetition. "More than anything." It was true. She remembered the moment Henry had been born. The way Jareth had looked like they'd given him the entire world. They'd had minutes together. Minutes as a family before the Fae Queen Bellatrix had arrived to collect what her evil curse entitled her to, the child conceived in their marriage's first 10 years. "Take me instead," Jareth had said, leaving Callie alone with their newborn son and a severed mate bond. "But then why hasn't he come back?" Henry's voice cracked. "It's been 8 years, Mama. If he loved us so much, why hasn't he found a way home?" The accusation in his tone cut deeper than any blade. "When the Fae Queen came to take you, your father offered himself instead. He saved your life, Henry." "I know that." Her son's eyes welled up with tears. "But if he really loved—" Henry bit his lip. "He should have come home by now." "He's trapped in the Fae realm, my love," Callie reminded him gently. "Or he's happy there," Henry challenged, sounding small. "He's happy with her, and so he stopped trying to escape." "No," Callie said. The certainty rose within her like a tide, washing away doubt. She hadn't known about the curse. Hadn't known that Jareth's former lover, the Fae Queen he'd left when he recognized Callie as his fated mate, had bound him with magic. "Claim your wife within 10 years and any child conceived belongs to me." Hadn't known that every moment of distance had been her husband protecting their future until her sister Mira had drugged him, shattering his control. And then Henry had been born, and Bellatrix had come. "He isn't happy there," Callie said, meeting her son's gaze. "He could never be, not without us." Henry studied her face, searching. "Then why haven't you tried to find him?" Callie's breath caught. Henry's eyes were bright with unshed tears and something worse, doubt. "Have you actually tried?" he asked. "Or have you just been sitting here being queen, pretending everything's fine?" 8 years. 8 years of searching, of consulting every mage and scholar in the kingdom. 8 years of refusing to give up, of holding on to faith when everyone, even Mira, told her to move on. As if she could. As if any other love could possibly compare to what she'd had with Jareth. "I have been trying," she said quietly. "Every single day for 8 years, I've been looking for a way to bring your father home." Henry's expression shifted. "You have?" he asked. "Yes." Callie squeezed his hands. "I've never stopped looking. Your Aunt Mira has been helping me research." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Henry's voice was small now, wounded. "I didn't want to promise you something I couldn't deliver," Callie explained. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then something fierce sparked in his eyes, replacing the hurt with determination. "But you're still looking?" he asked. "Of course I am." "Promise?" Henry whispered. Callie pulled her son into her arms. "Always," she swore, "I will never stop looking for your father." She was going to find him, whatever it took. Chapter 1. Like most nights, Callie made her way through the castle corridors to Mira's workroom. The familiar path took her past the portrait gallery. Jareth's official coronation portrait hung there, and she paused before it, drinking in the details the painter had captured. The set of his jaw, the silver of his eyes, the strong hands that had held their son with such devastating gentleness. 8 years, and the ache hadn't dulled. If anything, it had sharpened. "Evening, sister," Mira greeted when she entered. She was hunched over ancient texts with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many late nights searching for answers. Every time Callie looked at Mira, she remembered. The night her sister had given her that potion, the one that had shattered Jareth's control completely, the night that had ultimately led to him being taken. Callie both regretted it and treasured it in equal measure. Regretted it because it had cost her Jareth. Treasured it because it had given her Henry. He asked about his father again? Mira guessed, taking one look at Callie's face. Callie sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Henry's starting to resent me for Jareth's absence, she confessed. He believes I haven't been trying to find him. Mira's expression softened with sympathy. That's not fair to you. You've done everything possible. Does it matter, though? Callie interrupted. All my son sees is that his father is still missing, Mira. Her sister grimaced at that. Did you tell him, though? She asked. That I've been searching, yes, but Mira... Callie's voice cracked. What if I'm failing them both? Jareth trapped there, Henry growing up without his father. Stop! Mira's tone was sharp. Jareth made his choice to protect Henry. That's not on you. Callie sighed, the sound heavy with defeat. Henry is starting to doubt Jareth's love for him, she said. He thinks if his father really loved us, he would have found a way home by now, that maybe he's happy where he is. Mira remained quiet at that, her gaze sliding away. I told him he was wrong, obviously, Callie said, frowning at the reaction. Mira crossed her arms. What if he's not? She challenged. Wrong, I mean. Callie jumped to her feet, anger flashing hot and bright. Mira, you were there the night Jareth was taken, she protested. You saw his face. How can you even suggest... I'm sorry, Mira interrupted, but I don't understand how you're still so certain. He left with his ex-lover Callie, his former mistress. He didn't leave, Callie said, her voice dangerously low. He was taken. I know, but, Mira hesitated. What if he chose to stay with her? What if after all this time he adapted? Moved on? Callie gritted her teeth, furious. My mate was taken, she said quietly, fiercely. Kidnapped by a vindictive fae who couldn't accept that he'd chosen me over her. And you think he would choose to stay with the woman who threatened to take our son? Mira clenched her jaw. Fine, but Callie, what if... She paused, looked away. What if what? Callie demanded. Mira sighed, bracing herself. What if he's gone? She said quietly. Callie's hand flew to her chest, pressing hard against her sternum where the severed bond ached like an old wound. She closed her eyes, focused on breathing through the agony of even considering that possibility. If he were dead, she said, I would know. But the bond is severed, Mira started. I would know, Callie repeated, opening her eyes. I would feel that absence, and I don't. He's alive. Mira held up her hands in surrender. Your faith is extraordinary. After everything, 7 years of distance during your marriage, the curse, 8 years of separation, you've never once doubted him. Callie thought back to those 7 years. She'd tortured herself watching Jareth maintain careful distance, interpreting every averted gaze as rejection rather than what it truly was. Desperate, aching love held back by sheer force of will. I doubted whether he wanted me, Callie admitted. Spent 7 years thinking I was unwanted, but now I understand. Every choice he made was love. Staying away was love. Her voice strengthened. And I won't dishonor that by giving up on him. Something shifted in Mira's expression. What if I told you? Mira said slowly. The search might be over. Callie's breath caught. What? I might have found something. Mira pulled out a leather-bound journal, flipping it open. I've been corresponding with a fae folk expert in the northern mountains. She spread several pages across the desk. Callie leaned forward, seeing intricate diagrams covered in symbols she didn't recognize, spirals and geometric patterns that seemed to shift when she looked at them directly. She sent me this 3 days ago, Mira continued. There are places where the fabric between realms becomes thin, not often and not permanently, but at certain times, specific alignments of moon and season, gateways can open. Gateways, Callie breathed, her heart beginning to race. Our world and the fae realm exist alongside each other, just layered, like 2 pieces of fabric pressed together. Mira's finger moved across the page. Most of the time, the fabric is too thick to breach, but at certain locations, during certain celestial events, it thins. And if you know the right ritual, the right sacrifice. You think I could cross over? Callie asked, hope surging so violently she had to grip the desk to stay steady. You've found one? A gateway? Mira met her eyes. The Whispering Woods, at the eastern border. Under tomorrow night's full moon, the fabric will be thin enough. But Callie, the gateway requires a sacrifice. Something precious, given freely. and once you cross— I'll give anything, Callie interrupted. What did she have that was precious enough? Jewelry? Gold? But no, Fey magic didn't work like that. It wasn't about monetary value. Meanwhile, Mira looked distinctly uncomfortable, avoiding Callie's eyes. What's wrong? Callie asked. This is our first real lead in years, and you look like you're attending a funeral. Well, I'd rather not have to attend yours, sister, Mira snapped. The Fey Queen isn't going to just let you walk away with Jareth. I'll find a way, Callie said immediately. Already her mind was spinning ahead, stepping through the gateway into that impossible realm, searching for Jareth, finding him. That moment when their eyes would meet after 8 years apart. She could almost feel it, the warmth of his embrace. What if you can't come back? Mira's voice cut through the fantasy. Callie blinked, refocusing on her sister. What if the gateway only works one way? Mira pressed. Henry would lose both parents. If there's a chance, Callie said, the words coming instantly without hesitation. Any chance at all to reach him, I'm taking it. Callie, how soon can we leave? Mira studied her face for a long moment, then sighed in defeat. Tomorrow night. The gateway only opens under the full moon. After that, we'd have to wait months, maybe years. Tomorrow. One more day and she could finally go to him. What will you sacrifice? Mira asked quietly. It has to be something that truly matters to you. Callie reached for the chain around her neck without hesitation, pulling free the ring that hung there. Jareth's ring, the one he'd given her on their wedding day. This, she said, it's precious, and I give it freely for the chance to bring him home. Mira's expression softened with sympathy. Are you sure? I'm sure I want to give the ring, Callie said firmly. I meant, are you sure you want to leave Henry? Mira said. He needs his father, Callie replied. He's starting to resent me, starting to doubt whether Jareth loved him. The only way to fix that is to bring Jareth home. If I don't at least try, Henry will never forgive me. Mira nodded slowly. I see there's no changing your mind then, she said. There isn't, just— Callie grabbed her hand. You'll look after him, won't you, while I'm gone? Mira met her gaze. With my life, she swore, I'll look after him, you know I will. Callie closed her eyes. After 8 years, she was finally going to see Jareth again. She was going to bring him home. Whatever it took. Chapter 2. The Whispering Woods earned their name. Even in stillness, the ancient trees seemed to murmur secrets in a language Callie's wolf could almost understand. She and Mira stood before a massive oak, its trunk wider than 3 men standing side by side. Here, Mira said, pressing her palm against the bark. The gateway is here. Callie could feel it now, a thrumming power that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. Magic, old and vast and entirely foreign. The sacrifice, Mira reminded her. Callie held up Jareth's ring, the metal gleaming silver in the moonlight. For 8 years, this piece of him had rested against her heart. Giving it up felt like tearing away a part of herself. But for the chance to reach him, she'd sacrifice anything. I offer this freely, Callie said, her voice steady, for passage to the Fey realm. She pressed the ring against the oak's bark. The metal grew hot in her hand, then blazing, then— It melted into the wood, vanishing as though it had never existed. The tree trunk split open, revealing not wood but shimmering air that bent and twisted like heat rising from summer stone. Through the distortion, Callie glimpsed impossible colors and crystalline structures that hurt to look at directly. That's it, Mira breathed. That's the gateway. Callie turned to embrace her sister one final time. Thank you, Mira, for helping me search. Come back to us, her sister said fiercely. Both of you come home. Callie stepped back, facing the gateway. Her wolf surged forward, recognizing something beyond that shimmering barrier. Not home, but the path to it. The path to him. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped through. The world inverted. Up became down. Colors screamed and then went silent. Callie's wolf howled in distress as alien magic crashed over them, through them, remaking them in ways she didn't understand. Then her feet hit solid ground, and the disorientation shattered. Callie stood in a forest, but wrong. The trees were too perfect, their trunks silver-white and smooth as glass. The grass beneath her feet was blue-violet, soft as silk. The Fey realm. She'd made it. Meanwhile, beyond the forest's edge and fields of golden flowers, in a crystalline palace that caught the perpetual twilight of the Fey realm, stood a queen. One hand pressed against glass that had been spun from starlight, she watched the courtyard below. Her court moved through the gardens like living jewels, Fey nobles in silks that shifted color with each step, their laughter carrying on air. They danced and schemed and played their endless games of power, but Bellatrix saw only one figure among them. Jareth walked alone through her gardens, silver eyes distant as he moved between topiaries shaped like impossible creatures. Even from here, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like a man barely tethered to the ground. She'd given him finery, had placed him at her side and elevated him above nobles who'd lived for centuries. She'd tried to make this work. And yet, Your Majesty, one of her ladies-in-waiting approached. The evening meal is prepared. Shall I summon— No. Bellatrix's voice came out sharper than intended. I'll dine alone tonight. Another dinner where Jareth would sit across from her, politely eating food he barely tasted while she pretended this was what she'd wanted. No, not tonight. The lady-in-waiting retreated, and Bellatrix returned her gaze to the window. Her reflection stared back, ice-blue eyes, silver-white hair that fell like water down her back. She'd been beautiful for over 3 centuries. And yet the one man she'd managed to keep couldn't even look at her. Jareth had chosen her first. That was the truth she clung to. Before that wolf queen, before fated mate bonds, he had wanted Bellatrix. Freely, without coercion. They'd had 3 years together. 3 years where his smile had been genuine, where his promises had felt real, and when the empty ache inside Bellatrix hadn't felt so raw. When Jareth had come along, steady, mortal, she'd thought finally. Finally, someone who made promises and kept them, who didn't treat love like a game with an infinite number of players. She needed him, was the thing. Without him, without his love, she began to think of other things again, and she could not afford it. Would not. She'd wasted enough century on foolishness. Bellatrix's jaw tightened, her mind sliding toward a place she tried not to go. Enough, she told herself. She'd rather keep hoping Jareth would love her once more than to go there, for despite how impossible it seemed, it wasn't nearly as impossible as— Well, she said she wasn't going to think about it. He rarely came to her court these days anyway, always had some excuse about diplomatic matters. But she knew better. Knew he was watching her, judging her for keeping Jareth here. As if he had any right to judge her choices, as if his opinion mattered at all. Bellatrix turned from the window and curled her hands into fist. Why won't you love me? She whispered to the empty chamber. A sharp chime echoed through her chambers, the warning bells that guarded her realm's borders. Someone had breached the gateway. Someone had found a way through. Bellatrix's power unfurled instinctively, reaching out to taste the intruder's essence. Wolf, female, mortal. And beneath it all, a desperate determination that tasted like iron and hope. She knew, before the knowledge fully formed, who it was. Something cold and hot surged through Bellatrix's chest simultaneously. Anger, yes. But beneath it all, something that felt dangerously close to relief. Finally, this stalemate would end. The little wolf queen had finally come. Chapter 3. The Fey realm was wrong in ways that made Callie's wolf howl in distress, like the very air was watching her. Time felt slippery here, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. And the forest around her was beautiful, but in the way a knife blade catching light was beautiful, sharp and cold. Trees rose impossibly tall, leaves whispered in a language that was almost words, and while Callie walked and walked, with each step came the growing certainty that she was hopelessly, utterly lost. The path curved ahead, opened into a clearing dominated by a massive oak. No, not an oak. Something that resembled an oak. Callie stopped staring at the tree, then dread settled cold in her stomach. She'd been here before, an hour ago. No, she whispered. She turned, retracing her steps with growing desperation. The path should lead back the way she'd come. Should take her deeper into the realm, toward wherever Bellatrix's palace waited. But instead, there was that oak again. Damn it, the words exploded out of her. This had to be magic trapping her here, keeping her walking in circles while Jareth remained out of reach. But then suddenly, "Lost, little mortal," came a voice. Callie spun, her wolf surging forward in defensive instinct. A man stood at the edge of the clearing, No, not a man. Fae. No doubt about. For everything about him screamed other with an intensity that made Callie's mortal eyes struggle to focus. Tall and impossibly beautiful, sunlight seemed to have been woven in each strand of his hair, and his eyes were bluer than summer's sky. "Who are you?" Callie asked. He was looking at her the way a cat might look at a wounded mouse. "I'm no mortal wandering in a foreign land like a stray, that's for sure," came the reply. Callie forced herself to stand straight. "Very well, I'm seeking Bellatrix's palace," she announced. The Fae raised an eyebrow. It didn't make him look any less bored with her. "Are you now?" he asked. "And what business does a mortal wolf have with the Queen?" "That's between me and her," Callie said, keeping her voice steady. The Fae laughed. Bold words for someone who's been walking in circles for the past 3 hours. He circled her slowly, studying her with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl. "I don't see what's so special about you, human queen," he said. "Even for a mortal, you're rather plain." Heat flooded Callie's cheeks, but she lifted her chin. "I didn't come here to be admired," she said. "Clearly." He stopped in front of her, tilting his head. "You came for the shifter, yes? Bellatrix's little wolf pet." Callie's heart stuttered. "His name is Jareth," she said. "You know where he is?" "Everyone knows where he is, mortal child," said the Fae, rolling his eyes. "He's been decorating the Queen's court for 8 years now." Something dark flickered across his perfect features as he added, "A rather pathetic display, if you ask me." "Then help me reach him," Callie said. The Fae's eyebrows rose. "Why would I help you?" he asked. "What's in it for me?" Of course, Callie thought. She'd read enough about the Fae to know nothing was free here. "What would you like?" she replied carefully. The Fae studied her for a long moment, then he smiled. It was beautiful and terrible at once. "Well," he said, "I suppose it is rather painful to watch Bellatrix cling to your king like a drowning woman to driftwood," Evander said, studying his nails. "She's become bitter and boring, and for what? Some mortal?" He frowned in disdain. "For centuries she won't give me the time of day for being half mortal, and then she goes ahead and becomes obsessed with a full mortal man?" "I didn't know Fae could be half mortal," Callie replied neutrally. Somehow she could sense she was treading a sensitive path. "From my mother's side." Evander shrugged. "Well, she used to be mortal. That is, after she's married my father, she became Fae, but that didn't stop Bellatrix from mocking me at every—" He paused, pouted, then smiled once more. "Here's my proposition, human queen. I will guide you to Bellatrix's palace. I will help you gain an audience with our queen. In exchange, you will make her see reason. Make her let your king go." "That's what I came here to do," Callie said slowly. "Why do you need to bargain for something I already want?" "Because bargains have power here." Evander's voice dropped, serious for the first time. "If you succeed, the debt is paid and you're free. If you fail, if you leave this realm without your king, then you owe me one favor. Unspecified. To be called in at my discretion." Callie's pulse quickened. This was vague, and thus dangerous, for it gave the Fae too much power. "It's also your only option," Evander said pleasantly, "unless you'd like to spend the next 8 years walking in circles around that tree." Callie looked at the midnight oak, its glass leaves chiming softly in the windless air, looked back at Evander's ice-blue eyes, seeing nothing but alien amusement there. She thought of Henry, waiting at home, of Jareth, somewhere in this realm. "I accept," she said, extending her hand. Chapter 4. Walking next to Evander, Callie tried to focus on the path ahead, on keeping her breathing steady despite her wolf's constant agitation, but her mind kept spinning forward to what awaited her. Or specifically, how she might soon see her husband again. "So," Evander said, breaking the silence, "how exactly do you plan to challenge Bellatrix for your king's return?" Callie blinked. "Challenge? Well, did you plan on asking her nicely?" Evander's ice-blue eyes glinted with amusement. "I'm sure your husband already tried that, mortal child, and he's still here." The casual cruelty of it made Callie's jaw tighten. "So I must challenge her. Would she accept that?" Evander shrugged, the gesture too elegant to be casual. "Probably not. She quite likes her pet where he is, and besides, she has a hold on him because he broke his side of their bargain and she collected her due. Contracts are sacred here. Unbreakable." Callie's stomach sank. It wasn't a fair bargain, to ask him not to claim his mate for 10 years, to bear no children? Evander stopped walking, staring at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. Is that what it was? He wiped at his eyes. That is cold. And here I thought Bellatrix had lost her edge. She even specified that he wasn't allowed to tell me about it for the duration of the 10 years. Callie ground out, anger heating her chest. I thought my husband hated me. Evander actually had to pause to dry his eyes. Well, that is cruel, dare I say particularly twisted. He commented, eyes shining with something that looked uncomfortably like admiration. Callie gave him a look of pure disbelief. What? Evander shrugged. You have to admire a woman for her ability to make others suffer. It's an enormous quality here in the Fey realm. He met her horrified stare with complete sincerity. And besides, he added, it's your husband who broke his side of the bargain, mortal. If anyone is lacking here, it isn't Bellatrix. It's him. He wasn't aware of his actions, Callie snapped, immediately defensive. My sister gave him a drug and so— Wait, Evander interrupted. Are you saying the contract was obtained through improper means? Callie hesitated, uncertain where this was leading. Tell me, Evander pressed, how exactly did your king break the terms? The details matter. Callie found herself explaining, the curse, the 7 years of distance, the night Mira had drugged Jareth with an amplifier instead of a suppressant. Evander stopped walking abruptly. So he wasn't in his right mind when the conception occurred? He asked. Callie felt heat flood her cheeks at what he was implying. Well, only because deep down it was something he wanted, she said quickly, defensively. He wasn't unhappy about the conception. He was unhappy about the curse your queen placed on him and its consequences. Evander waved that away like it was irrelevant. No, child, you're not following. This is a major loophole in the contract. A major— Callie's breath caught as understanding dawned. A loophole. Indeed, Evander laughed. By Fey law, contracts obtained through coercion or manipulation or without proper consent are contestable. Your king didn't willingly break his bargain. He was forced through artificial means. That's good. Hope surged so violently in Callie's chest that she felt dizzy. So Bellatrix has to let him go? Not quite so simple. Evander started walking again, faster now, with purpose. She'll argue, find counter-interpretations. Fey law is complicated, layered. But you have grounds to challenge the contract's validity. With the right argument, presented before the court. He glanced at her, assessing. You might actually have a chance. They walked in silence for a time. The forest changed around them, the trees growing taller, the colors more vivid, the sense of watching presence intensifying, until Callie's wolf was a constant snarl beneath her skin. Then through the trees ahead something glittered. There, Evander said, the Crystal Palace. Callie's breath caught. It rose from the forest like a dream made solid, all crystalline spires and impossible architecture, walls that seemed to be carved from frozen starlight. It was the most beautiful thing Callie had ever seen. Come, Evander said, his voice gentler now. Stay close. The palace has protections against mortal intruders. He led her forward, the forest parting before them like water. Fey courtiers moved through the gardens, beings so beautiful they hurt to look at, dressed in impossible fashions. They stared as Callie passed, whispered in that almost language, smiled with too many teeth. Evander ignored them all, moving through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged. And they let him through, bowed to him even, stepped aside with respect and something that might have been fear. Callie had imagined Evander was some kind of rogue, someone with nothing to lose, operating on the fringes of Fey society, since he'd sought her out in the forest and was helping her challenge a queen. Clearly she'd been wrong. The palace doors opened without touch, revealing corridors of polished crystal that reflected Callie's image back at her 1,000 times. She looked small here, desperately out of place among all this inhuman beauty. And then the throne room, soaring ceilings that seemed to touch the sky itself, walls that shifted colors with each breath, and Fey nobles lined the room, their faces turned toward Bellatrix. Arms crossed, with a smirk curving her lips, she was staring at Evander in mix of satisfaction and annoyance. So you've returned? She asked, her voice carrying effortlessly through the crystalline space. Did you miss me? Evander replied, his tone matching hers for casual mockery. Miss you? Bellatrix's eyebrow arched. I barely noticed you were gone. Evander's jaw clenched. Strange, he snapped, because I distinctly remember you sending 3 messengers to find me last week. Someone from my council must have sent them. Bellatrix shrugged. Nothing personal. Of course. Evander's smile sharpened. Just like it's nothing personal that you're wearing the colors I said suited you best. Bellatrix's expression flickered. You're insufferable, she growled. And yet you, Evander began. Callie cleared her throat, interrupting them. Bellatrix's gaze snapped to her, and everything changed. You dare bring her here? She breathed, rising from her throne. The last words were directed at Evander, sharp with betrayal. But Callie wasn't looking at either of them anymore. Because there, standing to the left of the throne among a cluster of Fae courtiers, was Jareth. 8 years. 8 years since she'd seen him, touched him, heard his voice. And now, he was right here. Callie's wolf surged forward with a howl of recognition and joy and desperate relief. He looked worn. The silver of his eyes seemed dimmed somehow, but he was so close. He was alive. Her hands trembled. She wanted to run to him, but she forced herself to stay still. She had to be strategic, careful, like Jareth was being. He hadn't looked at her yet. He stood with that same distant expression she remembered from their marriage, present but not present, there but not there. Callie's chest ached. Was he afraid to show his joy? Soon, she promised him in her mind. Soon I'll reach you. The mortal queen is here to bargain, Evander announced to the assembled court, his voice carrying effortlessly through the crystalline space. The throne room fell silent. Bellatrix's eyes narrowed, her gaze shifting between Evander and Callie like she was trying to solve a puzzle that shouldn't exist. Bargain? She asked. She descended from her throne, moving toward Callie like a predator approaching prey. Yes, Callie said, lifting her chin. I'm here to bargain for my husband's freedom. Chapter 5. The Fae court watched with predatory interest as Callie stood before Bellatrix's throne. She could feel their eyes on her, hungry, amused. Not that it mattered. Callie had spent 8 years preparing for this moment. The moment she would get her husband back. I challenge the validity of your contract with King Jareth, Callie announced, her voice carrying through the crystalline throne room, on grounds of compromised consent. The murmurs started immediately, Fae nobles leaning toward each other, eyebrows raising with interest. Bellatrix's expression remained cold and amused. Do explain, little wolf. She shrugged, unaffected. This should be entertaining. Callie squared her shoulders. The contract terms specified that any child conceived within the first 10 years of marriage would belong to you. Correct, Bellatrix said, and he chose to offer himself in place of the child. Except the conception itself was obtained through manipulation. Callie's voice hardened. Jareth didn't willingly consummate our marriage that night. The murmurs grew louder. The Fae court was paying attention now, genuinely interested. Oh, I'm sorry, Bellatrix snorted. Did you have to torture it out of him? Laughter echoed through the throne room, and Callie felt herself blush, but she pursued. He was drugged that night. His consent was compromised. She cleared her throat. By Fae law, contracts obtained through coercion, manipulation, or without proper consent are contestable. Bellatrix's smile thinned. And who told you that? She asked, crossing her arms. Doesn't matter. Callie stepped forward. You claim Jareth broke the contract by conceiving a child, but if he didn't consent to the act that created that child, then he didn't truly break the terms. Fascinating logic, Evander's voice cut in from the side of the throne room. He was leaning against one of the crystal pillars, looking thoroughly entertained. She's done her homework, Bellatrix, wouldn't you say? Bellatrix shot him a look that could have frozen fire. No one asked for your commentary, Evander. And yet here I am, commenting. Evander's smile was sharp. But do go on, Bella. I'm curious to see how you'll wriggle out of this one. I don't need to wriggle out of anything, Bellatrix snapped. Then she turned back to Callie, composure sliding back into place like a mask. Your argument has merit, I'll grant you that. Relief started to bloom in Callie's chest. However, Bellatrix continued, if we're questioning consent, then perhaps we should question the entire foundation of your marriage bond. If Jareth didn't consent to consummating your marriage, did he truly consent to the bond itself? Was your marriage ever real? Or was it simply fated mate biology forcing him into something he never actually chose? The relief died. Callie's stomach dropped. Oh, that's clever, Evander murmured, sounding genuinely odd, twisted, but clever. Hush, you. Bellatrix winked at him before turning back to Callie. You claim your husband didn't choose to break the contract. But can you prove he ever chose you at all? That your bond was genuine and that I didn't save him from a fate of forced love? Callie's mind raced. This was a trap, but what choice did she have? Of course he chose me, she protested. We're fated mates. Exactly my point. Bellatrix smiled. Fated mates don't choose. Fate chooses for them, hence the name. Where's the free will in that? Where's the genuine love? The Fae court was riveting now, every eye fixed on this exchange. So, here is my counteroffer, Bellatrix continued. Since you've challenged the contract's validity, I'll give you a chance to prove your marriage was real. 3 trials. 3 tests to demonstrate that what you and Jareth share is genuine choice, genuine love, not just magic forcing you together. Callie's heart hammered against her ribs. And if I succeed? She asks. Bellatrix's eyes glittered. Jareth goes free, she said, and Callie had to hide her reaction. If I fail? She said instead. Then you've proven the marriage was never real to begin with, which means Jareth never truly belonged to you at all. Bellatrix's smile sharpened, and he remains here forever. The throne room fell silent except for the ambient hum of Fae magic. Callie's mind worked frantically. The trials could be anything, impossible tasks designed to make her fail. But now, if she refused, Bellatrix would use her own legal argument against her. She's trapped you rather neatly, Evander observed. Though I have to wonder, Bella, darling, are you certain you want to go through with this? What if the little mortal actually succeeds? She won't, Bellatrix said flatly. So confident. Evander pushed off from the pillar, moving closer. But then, you've always been confident about things you perhaps shouldn't be. Something flickered across Bellatrix's face. Pain, anger, something raw, before her mask slammed back down. None of this is of your concern, she said coldly. Callie watched them stare at each other, the tension between them thick enough to choke on. Then Bellatrix tore her gaze away. Do you accept my terms? She asks. Callie finally let herself look at Jareth. He stood among the Fae courtiers, watching the proceedings with an expression of detachment. As if all this, ultimately, didn't concern him. Callie tried not to let it deter her. He was probably trying to avoid making Bellatrix angry by showing joy at the sight of his wife. Unless... Was he angry she'd come, or had 8 years here changed him so fundamentally that he truly didn't care anymore? No. Callie rejected that thought immediately. She knew Jareth, knew his heart. I accept, she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. 3 trials. I'll prove our love is real. Bellatrix's smile was cold and satisfied. Excellent, then let's begin. Right now? Callie blinked. Don't I get time to prepare? This isn't a tournament, mortal child, Bellatrix interrupted. Callie's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm. She could do this. She would do this. For Jareth, for Henry, for the family she'd fought so hard to protect. Let the first trial begin, Bellatrix announced, her voice ringing through the crystalline space. And Callie squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and prepared to fight for everything she'd ever loved. Chapter 6. The throne room reconfigured itself with fluid grace, crystal walls sliding and reforming until a clear space opened in the center. The Fae courtiers pressed closer, forming a circle around the designated trial space. Bellatrix stood at one end, and on the other, near the Fae nobles, Jareth remained where he'd been standing, still watching with that same detached politeness that made Callie's chest ache. The first trial is simple, Bellatrix announced. You claim that your bond is real. Prove it. She gestured toward Jareth. Convince him to leave with you willingly. Callie's heart leapt. That was it? Just convince him? And the time limit? She asked. Bellatrix glanced toward the swirling sky. Sunset, which in the Fae realm comes when I say it does. She smiled. Let's say an hour. An hour, plenty of time. Callie looked at Jareth, really looked at him for the first time since entering the throne room. He was thinner than she remembered, the sharp angles of his face more pronounced. Begin, Bellatrix said, and there was something in her voice, satisfaction, anticipation, that should have warned Callie. But she was already moving, crossing the crystalline floor toward her husband. He was going to be looking at her, and she was going to breathe in his scent, and they would speak. He watched her approach unmoving, guarded. Jareth, she said, and gods just saying his name made her voice catch. I've come to take you home, Callie said, reaching for him instinctively. Henry is waiting. He's 8 years old now and he misses you so much. He asks about you every day. Please come home with us. Jareth frowned, searched her face, and, I'm sorry, he said, but who are you? The throne room erupted. Laughter, high and crystalline and cruel, washing over Callie like ice water. She didn't know, someone crowed. Look at her face, another said. The laughter built and built, echoing off the crystal walls until it was all Callie could hear. All she could process through the sudden, crushing weight of understanding. Her own husband didn't know her. Jareth was looking at her with genuine confusion, not recognition. Have we met? He asked again, a little more uncertain now. Callie felt her knees threaten to give out. This was magic. Enchantment. Bellatrix had done something to his memories, and she'd let Callie walk into this trial completely unprepared. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Bellatrix said. He was missing you so much, you see, that in my grand generosity I thought I'd soothe his suffering. Callie forced herself to look at the Fae Queen. You took his memories? She asked. For his own good, Bellatrix smirked. Anyway, the trial stands. You have less than an hour to convince Jareth to leave with you. Callie's hands were shaking. She looked at Jareth again. Really looked, the way she'd learned to during 7 years of watching him from afar. He looked lost, hollow. I know you, Callie said quietly, stepping closer. Even if you don't remember me, I know you. Jareth's expression flickered. I watched you for 7 years. Callie kept her voice steady even as her heart shattered. 7 years where we lived in the same castle, ruled the same kingdom, existed in the same space while maintaining careful distance. She moved around him slowly. You're exhausted. Not just tired, exhausted down to your bones, and your jaw is tight, which means you're grinding your teeth. You did that during council meetings when you were frustrated but couldn't show it. Jareth's eyes had widened slightly. You're not happy here, Callie continued, her voice softening. I can see it in every line of your body. You're going through motions, existing but not living. And I recognize that because I saw it before, during our marriage, during those 7 years when you were suffering in silence to protect our future. I don't understand, Jareth said, but there was less certainty in his voice now, more confusion that bordered on distress. I ignored your suffering once, Callie said. I was so focused on my own pain that I didn't see what was right in front of me. She met his eyes. I won't make that mistake again. The throne room had gone quiet. Even the Fae courtiers seemed caught by something in her tone. You don't remember me, Callie said. But I don't need you to remember. I just need you to trust that I see you, really see you. I know you're miserable here. I know because I memorized you, Jareth. I spent 7 years learning every detail of who you are. Jareth's hands had curled into fists at his sides. How can I trust you? He asked finally, his voice rough. I don't even know you. You don't have to trust me, Callie said simply. You don't have to know who I am or trust our past. Just trust that you don't belong here. This place is killing you slowly. Jareth's expression cracked. Come with me and I swear. Callie paused. I swear on everything I have. You'll be happier. Jareth looked at her hand, looked at her face. Something was happening behind his eyes. Recognition, but not of her. Recognition of truth when he heard it. Yes, he said, and the word seemed to surprise him as much as it did Bellatrix. I'll go with you. Relief crashed over Callie. First trial complete. Evander's voice rang out before Bellatrix could speak. The king has chosen to leave with her willingly. The terms are met. Bellatrix's face was twisted with fury. 2 more trials, she said, her voice cold and sharp. And the next one won't be so easy. Chapter 7. The second trial will... Bellatrix began, but Evander's voice cut through hers. Now wait a minute, Bella. Every head in the throne room turned toward him. He stood at the edge of the trial space, arms crossed, ice-blue eyes fixed on Bellatrix. You can't interrupt the trials, one of the Fae courtiers hissed. Why do you like this human queen so much anyway? Another said. But Evander ignored them all, his attention solely on Bellatrix. This isn't fair, he said. Bellatrix's expression went cold. What are you yammering about now? She sighed. The trial. Evander pushed off from the pillar he'd been leaning against. It's not fair, and you know it. How exactly is the mortal queen supposed to prove their love was real when you've locked away every memory he has of their life together? The first trial didn't require memory, Bellatrix pointed out, and the terms were met. What's your point, Evander? My point he said, stepping closer to her, is that you claim you want proof their love is real. But how can they prove choice when you've removed his ability to remember making that choice in the first place? Bellatrix's jaw tightened. Why do you even care? She snapped. This doesn't concern you, Evander. Something dangerous flickered in Evander's ice-blue eyes. You've been clinging to that mortal for 8 years like he's the only thing keeping you standing. He snapped back. I think I speak for everyone here when I say it's getting rather tedious. The throne room went silent, the tension between the pair thick enough to cut. How dare you, Bellatrix said. How dare you come here and mock me when you're— Yes, half-mortal, not worthy of your time. Evander interrupted, stepping closer, and Bellatrix actually retreated a step. Yet you've made this entire court watch your pathetic display over a completely mortal man for 8 years, so the least you can do is listen to someone half-fey and give the trials a fair chance. Bellatrix stomped her foot. I don't have to do anything you say, she seethed. Then do it for yourself. Evander's voice dropped. Prove that your claim on him has any validity at all. Go on, I dare you. Bellatrix's hands clenched into fists. For a long moment, she just stared at Evander, something raw and vulnerable flickering across her perfect face before her mask slammed back into place. Fine, she spat, if only to prove you wrong. She turned toward Jareth, raising one hand. The enchantment will be lifted, but— She looked at Callie. He still has to pass the test. Memory or not. Agreed, Callie said quickly before Bellatrix could change her mind. Bellatrix snapped her fingers. The sound echoed through the crystalline space like breaking glass. Jareth gasped, staggering as though he'd been struck. His hands went to his head, silver eyes going wide with shock and pain and sudden, overwhelming awareness. Jareth, Callie started forward instinctively. He looked up, and this time his eyes truly saw her. His face transformed. Shock gave way to disbelief to desperate hope to something that looked like agony and joy twisted together. His silver eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. Callie. Her name came out broken, desperate. How are you here? I came for you, Callie said, tears streaming down her face. Of course I came for you. Did you really think I wouldn't? Jareth took a step toward her, reaching. Callie, he said, frantic. Is Henry— He's safe, Callie said quickly. He's home with Mira. He asks about you every day. Jareth's face crumpled. His hand covered his mouth, a sob catching in his throat. 8 years, I've missed 8 years of his life. Now that you have your precious memories back, Bellatrix interrupted coldly, let's see if they help you at all. She gestured, and the throne room began to shift again. The air shimmered, distorted, and suddenly there wasn't one Callie standing in the throne room, there were 100. Everywhere she looked, she saw herself, identical copies wearing the same travel-worn clothes, the same expression of shock, the same golden hair and green eyes. The second trial, Bellatrix announced, her voice carrying through the room. 100 perfect copies of your wife, King Jareth. Identical in every way, same appearance, same voice, same scent. She smiled coldly. I've even replicated the mate bond across all of them. Callie's heart sank. That was impossible. You get one choice, Bellatrix continued. Walk through them, examine them. Take all the time you need, but when you choose, you only get one chance. She turned to the Fae Court, her satisfaction evident. Begin, Bellatrix said. The binding released Jareth. He could move freely now, walk among the copies, try to find his real wife among the perfect duplicates. Callie watched him take a single step forward. Watched his eyes scan across the crowd of her doppelgangers. Watched him smile. And then, without hesitation, without pausing to examine anyone, without even a moment of uncertainty, he walked directly through the crowd of copies in a straight line. Straight to her. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with a touch so familiar it made her sob. Found you, he said simply. The throne room erupted in shock and disbelief. Bellatrix looked like she'd been struck. That's impossible, she stammered. How did you— How? Jareth didn't take his eyes off Callie. Because your copies are based on what you've observed of her, what you know, what you've seen. He traced the line of Callie's jaw with infinite gentleness. But I've been observing her for years. He turned to face Bellatrix, keeping one hand on Callie's face like he couldn't bear to stop touching her. 7 years where we lived in the same castle and I wasn't allowed to touch her. His voice roughened. So I looked. Gods, I looked. I memorized everything. He turned back to Callie, his silver eyes full of love and pain and desperate tenderness. The way you tilt your head slightly to the left when you're thinking deeply. His thumb traced her collarbone. How you touch right here when you're nervous. Callie's hand flew to her collarbone, realizing he was right. The small scar on your right hand from when you were 7 and fell out of a tree, Jareth continued. The way you breathe. I could hear you breathing across a crowded throne room and know it was you. His voice dropped, becoming almost reverent. The exact shade of gold in your hair, the way you say my name, the sound of your footsteps. I know everything that makes you you. I could find you blind, Jareth said fiercely. Could find you deaf, because I spent 7 years starving for you. Callie was crying openly now, unable to stop the tears. He pulled her closer, pressing his forehead to hers despite the interested murmurs of the Fae court. Your copies are perfect, he said to Bellatrix without looking at her. But they're based on surface observation. I know all of Callie, every detail, every tell, every tiny thing that makes her herself. The throne room had gone absolutely silent. Callie stared at him, something breaking open in her chest. The 7 years, those terrible, painful 7 years where she'd thought he couldn't stand to look at her, where she'd believed she was unwanted. He'd been memorizing her. Those 7 years were never empty, she whispered, understanding finally, completely. Never, Jareth confirmed. It was torture and salvation both. I couldn't touch you, couldn't be near you, but I could see you, and I... Yes, all right, we get it. Evander interrupted the silence, giving Bellatrix a carefully neutral look. Second trial passed. The king identified his wife. Bellatrix stood frozen, her expression cracked and vulnerable in a way Callie hadn't seen before. Evander noticed and his jaw tightened. Did he ever know you like that? Evander asked, moving to stand beside her. In all the years you had him, did Jareth ever memorize you? Stop, Bellatrix whispered, but she didn't look at him. You know the answer, Evander said, and now there was bitterness threading through his words. You've always known. Bellatrix's hands were shaking. 2 trials passed, she said finally, her voice brittle. But there's still one more, and this time, her eyes glittered with something wild and hurting. This time, I won't be so generous. Chapter 8. The final trial is simple, Bellatrix announced, her voice ringing through the crystalline throne room. Evander conjured himself a chair and leaned back. Oh, this should be good. Bellatrix shot him a look before turning back to Jareth and Callie. One of you may leave, return to your realm, to your child, to your life, free and unharmed. She paused. The other stays, forever. Callie's stomach dropped. You must choose, Bellatrix continued. Who leaves? Who stays? Brilliant, Evander said, conjuring wine. Self-preservation versus love. You always did save the cruelest for last. Bellatrix beamed. I knew you'd like it. But Jareth and Callie spoke simultaneously. I'll stay. Their eyes met, desperation mirrored in both. I won't leave her, Jareth stated. I stayed away for 7 years to protect her. I won't abandon her now. No, Callie interrupted, heart pounding. I didn't spend 8 years searching just to abandon you. You sacrificed everything. It's my turn. Evander groaned. This is going to take forever. He snapped his fingers, producing a wine bottle. Anyone need refreshments? Bellatrix snorted despite herself. Callie, please. Jareth cupped her face. I can't lose you again. 8 years nearly destroyed me. That's why I should stay. You've already given up 8 years. No. Jareth grabbed her hands. Those 7 years staying away from you, that was the worst torture I've ever endured. Every day seeing you and not being able to touch you, it was dying slowly. His voice cracked. Then I had you for 8 months completely, and losing that, I won't survive it again. You will, Callie said fiercely. For Henry, he needs you. She traced his face. You gave me everything. Let me give this back. I don't want freedom if it means leaving you here. And I don't want you trapped for another eternity. Impasse. Callie's mind raced. They'd both refused, both chosen sacrifice. Wasn't that proof enough? Neither of us will sacrifice the other, Callie announced to Bellatrix. We've both chosen to stay. Isn't that proof our love is real? She lifted her chin. Will you let him go? Have I convinced you? Something flickered in Bellatrix's expression before her face hardened. No, she said, petulant. Liar, Evander said lazily. Bellatrix whirled. Shut up. Why don't you drink yourself unconscious? Why don't you find a new toy to play with? Evander shot back, hurt beneath the mockery. Another thought struck Callie. I should stay, she said to Jareth. I made a deal with Evander. Even if I left, he could call in his favor. Trap me somewhere else. Jareth's expression shifted to horror. What? What? Bellatrix exploded. The palace walls shook. Fae courtiers stumbled. Everyone stared at Bellatrix except Evander, calmly pouring wine. Is it true? Bellatrix demanded, stalking to him. He didn't look up. Is what true? Bellatrix snapped the glass from his hand and hurled it across the room. Someone yelped. Did you make a bargain with the mortal? Evander finally looked at her, smiling peacefully. What if I did? Why? She exclaimed. Why would you? She turned on her heels and began pacing. What's with you all and this mortal woman? What makes her so special? She asked, gesturing wildly. She's certainly not prettier than me, and it's not like she has any magic. She can turn into wolf, but I can turn into anything I wish. She was gesturing wildly now, her composure completely shattered. I don't understand why you chose her over me. She's my mate, Bella. Jareth interrupted quietly. You know that. Bellatrix stopped mid-rant and blinked, sending him a look. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked almost embarrassed, like she'd completely forgotten he was even there. Because she hadn't been talking to him, Callie realized. You have feelings for him, she said, the words coming out soft with wonder. For Evander. The throne room went utterly silent. But Evander's head snapped up, ice-blue eyes fixing on Bellatrix with sudden intensity. Meanwhile, the Fae Queen flushed, actually flushed, color rising in those perfect cheeks. What did you just say? She asked. Her voice was strangled. Callie hesitated. Perhaps this wasn't her place. But I said you have feelings for him. She insisted, because she needed an out, one for her and her husband, and suddenly she thought she may have found one in the Fae Lord who'd helped her here. The silence stretched. Bellatrix looked everywhere but at Evander, at the walls, at the ceiling, at Callie. You're ridiculous, mortal, she finally said, but her voice shook. Callie watched Evander's expression shudder completely at that word. Am I, though? She thus insisted gently. She turned to Evander, who was determinedly not looking at anyone. That's why you offered me the bargain, Callie said, watching him carefully. I was going to come here to find Jareth anyway, you knew that. But you offered to help, to make sure I would get him out, because you wanted him gone. Evander's hand paused mid-pour, just for a second. Well, of course I want him gone, Evander said with a shrug. She's been obsessed with moping over him for 8 years, and it's depressing. Depressing for you, Callie said patiently, gently, because you're in love with her. The wine bottle shattered in Evander's hand. He stood abruptly, staring at the broken glass and spilled wine like he couldn't quite understand how it had happened. Not at all. His voice was rising now, defensive. I wouldn't waste my time being in love on a woman who spent the last century calling me worthless, making sure everyone knows I'm only half Fae, reminding me at every opportunity that I'm beneath her. Oh, good, Bellatrix interrupted, her voice sharp and wounded, because it would be really embarrassing if you had feelings for me after all that— Well, Jareth interrupted, you did spend our entire relationship talking about him. Every head in the room turned to stare at him. Callie felt him tense beside her, but his expression was calm, almost sympathetic. What? Bellatrix's voice was barely a whisper. Jareth met her eyes with something that looked like understanding. The whole time we were together. You kept comparing everything I did to Evander, praising me for it, but ultimately, well, thinking of him. Callie looked at Evander. He'd gone completely still, his ice-blue eyes fixed on Bellatrix with an intensity that was almost painful to witness. Meanwhile, Bellatrix was staring at the floor, like it was the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen, and every courtier was holding their breath. Callie herself felt frozen, afraid to move. Fine, Bellatrix said abruptly, her voice too loud. You've proven your love. You may go, both of you. Get out of my palace. She still wasn't looking at Evander. Callie should have jumped at the chance, should have grabbed Jareth and run before Bellatrix changed her mind. But there was something here, something important that needed to happen. If she and Jareth left now, these two Fae would continue their dance of denial for another century. And while she didn't care much for their happiness, she did want to make sure Bellatrix was never tempted to come back for Jareth, so... "See?" Callie said quietly. "Now you're so embarrassed about him knowing you love him that you're willing to let us go." Bellatrix's head snapped up, eyes wide with something like panic. Callie turned to Evander. "If anything," Callie continued gently, "this shows she cares more about what you think than about Jareth, wouldn't you say?" The silence that followed was deafening. Callie watched Evander's throat work as he swallowed. When he spoke, his voice was rough, uncertain. "Is it true?" he asked. He wasn't looking at Bellatrix directly now, had turned his gaze to the wall behind her throne, but his whole body was tense, waiting. Bellatrix was also determinedly looking anywhere but at him. Her chest was rising and falling rapidly. "What?" she asked, and everyone in the room knew exactly who she was talking to. Evander's jaw clenched. He made a frustrated gesture. "Do you—" His voice broke slightly. He tried again. "Do you care about what I think more than you care about—" He gestured toward Jareth, frustrated. "What does it matter?" Bellatrix snapped. "You never cared about how I feel." Evander flinched like she'd struck him. "I want to know," he said petulantly. Bellatrix looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time since this exchange began. "You want to know if I care more about you than I care about him?" Bellatrix's voice had gone quiet. "A man I stole away from his family out of sheer desperation because I couldn't have you?" Evander looked away sharply, his whole body going rigid. His jaw was clenched so tight, Callie could see the muscle jumping. "I do," he managed. Bellatrix stared at him. Callie watched her expression cycle through emotions, surprise, confusion, then something that looked like dawning understanding. Everyone in the throne room was holding their breath, and, "Yes," Bellatrix said finally, the word coming out resentful. Evander's head snapped up and she went on as their eyes finally met. "Of course I care about you more," Bellatrix said, her voice sharp. "I can't believe you even have to ask." Evander looked stunned. Then something like joy began to break across his face. Bellatrix noticed. "Why?" she asked with a smirk. "Were you jealous?" "No," Evander said immediately. It sounded absolutely transparently fake. Bellatrix's lips twitched despite herself. "How convenient you're half-mortal," she said, something almost fond in her voice. "You always were able to lie when you wished." She paused, and when she spoke again, there was the hint of a smile. "You're rather bad at it, though," she said with a smile, tentative, uncertain, but genuine. Callie cleared her throat gently. "Since you have each other now," Callie said softly, "could Jareth and I perhaps go? We've proven our love to you." Evander turned to Bellatrix and pouted. "I would like your pet gone," he said imperiously, "if you're amenable." Bellatrix studied her nails with affected disinterest. "Well, how will I keep busy without him? Nothing ever happens around here." "I could be persuaded to entertain," Evander offered, also feigning disinterest. You're never around," Bellatrix said with a pout. "Well, I wasn't going to hang around watching you moon over him," Evander said, gesturing at Jareth. "It was depressing." "Depressing for you," Bellatrix echoed, and now she was definitely smiling. "Terribly," Evander said. Bellatrix rolled her eyes, but there was no real annoyance in it. "Fine," she said. She turned to Callie and Jareth, and her imperious mask tried to slide back into place. "You've fulfilled your contract and proven your love is genuine." She waved a hand dismissively. "And, beside, I'm getting awfully bored with the two of you, as is everyone here, I'm sure." The Fae Court murmured agreement, some of them looking relieved that the drama might finally be over. "You can leave now," Bellatrix said. She snapped her fingers. The world inverted. Colors screamed and went silent. Callie felt Jareth's hand tighten on hers, the only solid thing in a universe that had suddenly lost all rules. She held on desperately, terrified of losing him now when they were so close. Then her feet hit solid ground. They were standing in the castle courtyard, home. The familiar stone walls rose around them. And Jareth was there, solid and real and finally free. He pulled her into his arms so violently they both staggered. Callie did the same, her hands mapping the familiar planes of his face, the breadth of his shoulders, the strong line of his jaw. 8 years, Jareth said against her hair, his voice wrecked. 8 years, Callie. "I know," Callie said, tears streaming down her face. She could feel him trembling, could feel her own body shaking with relief and joy and the overwhelming reality of having him back. I know, but we're here now, together, finally together. They held each other as the sun set over their kingdom, two people who'd fought across realms and years and impossible obstacles to be exactly here. Home, safe, and utterly, completely in love. Epilogue. Henry's door was open. Callie stood in the doorway with Jareth, watching Henry sleep in the pre-dawn light. He looked so much older than when she'd left. Had it really only been 2 days? It felt like a lifetime. He has your hair, Jareth whispered, his voice thick with emotion. And your eyes. God's, Callie, he's perfect. He's been waiting for you, Callie said softly, every single day for 8 years. Jareth's hand tightened on hers. She could feel him trembling. Henry stirred, his eyes blinking open. For a moment, he looked confused. Then his gaze landed on Jareth and his whole face transformed. Papa? He murmured. The word was barely a whisper, uncertain, hopeful, afraid to believe. Jareth dropped to his knees beside the bed, and suddenly he was the one who looked uncertain. Yes, it's me. I'm home, Henry. I'm so sorry I was gone so long. Henry launched himself into Jareth's arms with a sob. Jareth caught him, pulling their son close, and Callie watched her husband break apart. 8 years of grief and longing and desperate love poured out as he held the child he'd sacrificed everything to protect. You came back, Henry sobbed into Jareth's shoulder. You came back. You came back. I'll never leave again, Jareth promised, his voice raw. Never. I swear it. Callie sank down beside them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Her family. Finally whole. 8 years of searching, 8 years of faith, 8 years of refusing to give up. And it had led them here, home, whole, and finally at peace. Their story had a happy ending after all. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed this part 2. So many of you deeply connected with Callie and Jareth's story, and were eager to know what really happened to him. So I rolled up my sleeves, added a little extra writing magic, and wrote this final part just for you. And a quick note before you go, you can get 50% off your first month on Patreon with the code BLACKFRIDAY50. It's the perfect moment to unlock bonus chapters, POVs, and exclusive stories. The offer runs until next Friday. Just enter the code at checkout. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next story.